What I want to do is go through and give you guys insights to where a Dream 100 list would apply and when to do something about it. As we go into this training, just to give you guys an idea of who I am. Some of you possibly have never interacted with me. I'm a previous agency owner as well, just like a lot of you. And I built essentially 2 agencies on my own. And then in 2018 or 19, I came on board with High Level to scale their agency, and that was a great relationship with Rob and Alex and things like that. And long story short, I've been in the trenches with you where it's a struggle, where it's hard to land clients, and it's not as easy as people make it sound like. And I've also been part of launches where we got to over 500 to 600 plus clients a month in systematic ways. And at the end of the day, what I want to do is just share from my own experiences of building out agencies. Okay. Now, this whole month, if you don't know, if you're brand new, or if this is your first time seeing one of our streamings today, I want to tell you all of January, we're focused 100% on agency organic prospecting. Okay. So far, we've shared some great ideas. A lot of people are giving me feedback of a lot of the action that they're taking. In all these webinars that I do this month, since they're all theme-based, quite often what I've been doing is referring some concepts and ideas back to the SAAS Fast Track program. Today's content, it's actually not in the Fast Track program. I've shared a little bit of it, had some mentioning of it, but I didn't go into depth in any one of those scenarios. So this will be new content for you. Just a quick review. This is a recommended SaaS pricing model that we've been talking about for the last several months. You have to have gateway offers. That's not the same thing as your core offers as a SaaS company. You should have your core offers, your maintenance offers, where you're selling subscriptions separately for the software piece and then adding on your Facebook ads and Google ads as a separate item. So that way, in case if they cancel Facebook ads or whatever else, they're still keeping your subscription obviously into a downsell offer. These are things that I have essentially reviewed quite often, and I just want to review that with you in here. So where should you be with respect to this month's agency organic prospecting theme, right? Here's a to-do list. If you were to start with the first webinar we did in January, here's a chronological way of how I would recommend you launch your SaaS brand, okay? The first thing you want to do, obviously, is creating your vision board of what you're going to do in 2022. So there is like a North Star that you're following. So that's a webinar that we did, and it's uploaded into the YouTube channel. The second thing we talked about is setting up your cold email outreach before you do anything else. The third thing we talked about is building out your prospecting lighthouse. The fourth thing we talked about is building a certain type of SaaS lead magnet that's relevant to you and your industry, whether it's video stories or interactive tours, things like that. I've shared, we've done a webinar on that. So if you want to watch those replays, you should. The last one we talked about was setting up your audience management tools and systems in those niche specific pockets, right? Some of you that is relevant with LinkedIn marketing. Some of you need to go through marketing into a Facebook group with a partner. Some of you it's, a certain podcast. Some of you it's, going to certain events and conferences in industries that are relevant and present in those areas, right? So either way, once you figure out those things, the next thing you want to do is creating your Dream 100 list. So let's dive into the idea of what your Dream 100 list would look like for your SaaS. Let's interact, guys. Give me some ideas. How many of you guys have heard of the Dream 100 list so far? Give me some comments in the streaming on Facebook. I have my phone here, and what I'm doing is following you guys and reading some of those comments. How many of you guys have a Dream 100 list? Give me a comment that says Dream 100 if you already have an idea, if you've heard of Dream 100 list before in the past. Type in Dream 100 for me. This will give me like an idea of where the room is as I go through today's training. Okay. Okay, Vijay says Dream 100. Hector says not yet. Let's see, who else? Anybody else? Have you heard of Dream 100 so far? Okay. Okay, Douglas says, what's your core SaaS offer? Which we can discuss. We'll have an open discussion after this training, towards the end of the training. Seppi says, not yet. Okay, so the idea of Dream 100, okay, before I explain that, okay, I want to help you understand the psychology of marketing, okay? And this is if you never listen to a single webinar I ever do at high level or anywhere, like if you ever decide to not listen to anything I have to say, this slide right here is probably the most important piece of information that anybody could ever share in the marketing world, okay? And there's a guy named, well, I want to help you understand where this comes from, okay? You know what? Matter of fact, I think I have one of my books here. So this book right here, you guys see this? Let me see. Where am I? Where is my camera? I can't even see myself. Let's see where we are. Okay, yeah, there you are. So this book, well, it's probably inverted on your thing, right? But this book is called Influence, right? This is one of the old school books in marketing. And a guy named, he's a researcher, professor, essentially like a big figure in the psychology world of marketing. And what Robert Cialdini talked about is having certain principles in how people say yes, okay? And I want to kind of give you like a fundamental quick synopsis of this real quick, because if you don't understand this, you're not going to understand the Dream 100 idea, right? Because it's very sensitive. Dream 100 is very sensitive to the principles of this book. Now, I recommend you getting it, reading it. I obviously read quite a bit and listen to a lot of information and content, but I want you to take a look at it and apply it to yourself, okay? So, but let's first understand why people say yes, okay? So Robert Cialdini says the principles of persuasion is built on, essentially these 6 things. There's actually a 7th one, but either way, it's built on these 6 main items, right? And after you understand this, you'll understand when you create content for your lighthouse, when you do your cold emailing, when you present offers, when you do your Dream 100, everything will start to click, okay? So the first thing you want to pay attention to is the idea of reciprocity. Reciprocity means like there's a desire to give back in kind gesture when you receive an unexpected gift, right? So let's say you get a gift from somebody that's unexpected, you're going to always deep down inside your heart want to provide something back to them, because that's the way persuasion in your heart feels like. That's just the way most humans think, right? In most scenarios, right? The other thing is commitment. Commitment is the idea that you've already said yes, and because you've said yes, you don't want to go back on the commitment, so you're going to stick it out, right? So a lot of times when you hard close somebody and they just jump into account management, quite often they are like, you know what, I've already paid for the guy, I'm already in the system, I'm already getting started, and because of that, I don't want to make any changes, right? That's the same idea of like, let's say you have one of those food delivery apps, or you use Uber, because you have your card's already in there, your email systems are in there, you don't want to go download Lyft or something else because you're already committed to this process that you already have, okay? The other thing is social proof. Social proof is the idea that there's a desire to follow the lead of somebody like you, right? So if you are a basketball player, odds of you wanting and liking and following a basketball player and how they do things is probably stronger than anything else, right? Somebody shared a podcast link, I think Ben, he said, hey, this episode sums it up. But I want you guys to do homework on this, this persuasion principles, because there's a whole book around what I'm just sharing, guys, okay? So I'm not the expert here. Robert Cialdini is the one that built and layered out these principles, and he applies it so many different ways, okay? The fourth one is liking, the idea that there's a desire to agree with the person that resembles you or share similar values, right? So people from the same place tend to like each other because guess what? They might have similarities in likings and values. That's just a simple principle of persuasion of why somebody would say yes to you, right? The fifth thing is authority. Authority is the idea that because you have a lab coat, because you have a badge, because you are seen as an authority or an expert in a certain subject, they tend to like you or say yes to you because you're perceived as the authority of that space, right? Scarcity is the idea that to get something that is like limited, or there's lack of time that you can put towards it, or quantity, or even space, or it's the idea of FOMO, right? It's the feeling of missing out. Oh, I don't want to miss out on this opportunity because of that. I'm gonna jump in, and these are principles of why people say yes. Okay, does that make sense? Give me a yes if that makes sense. Is this getting your gears turning? Okay, guys, I'm following the Facebook streaming, by the way, today instead of the Zoom chat, because I want you guys to comment in and interact with me. I don't want to be the only one talking, okay? Is this making sense so far? Did you get something out of the idea of Cialdini principles, right? So now, if you understand basics of Cialdini principles, let's figure out how this applies to you, right? It's one thing to know these theories, it's another thing to understand how to apply this, right? John says, you're spinning my gears. Well, John, like I'm telling you, this month I went chronological in what you should do, and go to the first webinar and follow through in chronological order. So that way your mind is not spinning, and that's not my intention to confuse anybody. I'm just really giving you a chronological sequencing of how I would launch my agency, right? So at this point, how do I apply Cialdini principles, right? Now, link to the book, man, I don't know. This is what the book looks like. You're gonna have to find it on Amazon or somewhere else. I like hard copies, by the way, and I keep some of my favorite books around, and I reread things to get my mind going. But I recommend you finding it. And it's one of those classic marketing books. Like it's like the David Ogilvy of copywriting books, right? Either way, so when you take these 6 principles of reciprocity and scarcity and all those different things, that's like your fundamental basis, right? Those are things that you must include. If you can get 5 out of those 6 or 4 out of those 6, odds of your offer being very strong is high. Odds of somebody saying yes is very high, right? But how do you apply it? Here's how big corporate companies apply it. Here's how individuals like myself, or our brands like High Level, here's how we would apply it. We would pick a canvas, right, of how all of our messaging will be, right? So if you look at politicians, they're very good at picking a canvas to convey their messages. Even though 2 or 3 different politicians may have the same message, they may have different deliveries, they may have different mechanism of messaging, right? So in that scenario, you can choose disruption and controversy as a canvas, right? You can be the most controversial guy or gal in the industry to capture attention when you deliver the Cialdini principles around your brand. Are you guys following me? Am I going over anybody's head, or is this making sense, right? Some people do, so to give you an idea of disruption and controversy, right? Certain politicians will just like completely just, insult the other competitors, right? And they'll just create controversy and disruption, and they will get their likings that way. And that's a canvas that they've designed and planned, right? Motivational, like there are plenty of motivational speakers who will just leverage the idea of encouraging you. And spiritual, obviously, ton of you will see people just sharing their principles and beliefs in spirituality, right? And they tend to find those people that are in those likeness, and they'll get a yes from them. Some people are family driven. Hey, you know what? I'm a family guy. You're a family person. Can I share my stories of family with you, right? So they become like this safe haven of somebody who's married with kids or whatever. And the idea and the canvas that they share is around family. Luxury, right? Luxury, believe it or not, is one of the more effective ones. Where how many of you see those ads of Lambos, right, and Teslas and all kinds of stuff everywhere, right? It's like, hey, I'm creating this lifestyle. It's the world that I live in because I'm successful, ultra successful. But if you look at it from a marketing perspective, those are canvases. Entertainment. Comedians are famous for entertainment. They'll pick a certain segment of entertainment and go all in while they're getting out their messaging. How many of y'all are with me so far when it comes to principles of Robert Cialdini and the influence principles of persuasion? And now you're taking that and combining with your canvas of what's comfortable for you. Like for me, I'm not comfortable with disruption and controversy. I'm comfortable with motivational. I'm very comfortable with spirituality. I'm comfortable with family. I'm not comfortable with luxury stuff. I don't want to, like just flaunt things that I have or do, things like that. And every once in a while, I'll pepper in and sparkle in a little bit of entertainment where I'm saying some things that are just funny or whatever, just things like that. So how many of you guys understand the fundamentals of persuasion, right? And what I want to do is build on that. Hector says yes. I'm getting a lot of yeses. Okay, cool. Right? So I want to build on that and get to your Dream 100, right? So have this in your mind, right? Your Dream 100, you've got to be extremely sensitive of the Cialdini principles and the canvas that you're using to deliver and capture attention. Okay? So what in the world is Dream 100, right? And how does this all come together? By now, guys, you should have your cold email running. Your branding lighthouse should be somewhat put together or started, right? Your SaaS lead magnets should be underway, right? What was the fourth one? You need to identify those niche pockets. The fifth item for January, right? Because I promise you guys, by January 31st, you should have organic channels running and inbound leads coming in. And that's the whole idea, right? So Dream 100 list is the idea that you identify the most ideal customers that will find the best success with your business and your offer compared to anybody else. In other words, let's say your market is like 50,000 members. Out of those 50,000 members, you have to identify the top 100 that will have the best success with you. Does that make sense? And usually, by the way, these are bigger players that you're trying to connect, and they're behind a gatekeeper, and you cannot figure out a way to get in front of them. Okay? So this is not just finding any customers. This is you taking a big list and getting it down into like a targeted list, right? Where that targeted list is now mapped out, planned out, and strategized. And your Dream 100 could change almost every quarter, ideally, depending on how much work you put towards it, right? So what is the ideal criteria for your SaaS customers? Depends on you figuring out what success means on your platform, right? Whatever SaaS products you've built out, you've got to figure out who's having the best success and how to attract more of those people with success. Sometimes you'll be able to find that out by figuring out, oh, you know what? My system does well when I attract people with a certain number of team players, right? A team member size. Or you can say, you know what? A business that is just launched and it's before 2-3 years of growing are the best customers for me from the beginning stages, right? Because they usually don't have anything set up yet. Maybe that's your ideal customer. Or maybe you're the opposite. You know what? it doesn't make sense for you to talk to anybody that's newer than 3 years of age in business, right? The other is the revenue threshold. You know what, Paulson? In my Dream 100 list, the best Dream 100 for me is somebody that's making at least 100,000 a month in their business, right? Because typically they're matured in certain levels of the business, and I can, figure out how to take them to another level. The other one is activity or volume level. Some people may have that revenue, but they may not have the volume that you want for you to maybe provide lead generation, right? Maybe that's the service you provide. The other is industry licensing, right? Some people have unique licensures that other people don't have, and because of that, you can identify them as somebody more elite. For example, a university professor of an industry is somebody that I would admire and think, okay, that person has different influence versus the average person in the industry, because now he's a teacher of that space, or he has a certain doctorate degree or a licensure or whatever else. You guys get my point, right? So you need to figure out your ideal criteria for your Dream 100. Now, here's a secret. Are you guys following me? Is this helpful, guys? Let me see where we are with comments. And as you have ideas and questions, make sure you comment down in the Facebook streaming. Okay, cool. I have this handy. My phone is my saving grace, so I can see the comments. Okay, cool. So here's a secret to a successful Dream 100, y'all. Remember that it's a long-term and individually customized approach, right? So remember, I said ideally this is the big fish in your space, right? So meaning you're not going to just get in front of them really quickly. They have gatekeepers, they have people around them, or whatever. Maybe it's a brand that you're trying to attract. Maybe it's a publication that you're trying to attract, or an association, right? But this would be highly targeted list versus like a big list. And you need to identify them in two ways. One, their influence, and then your influence on them for success within your products or services. Some people may be perfect to partner up with, but they may not become your customers, right? So I'll talk about a little bit more on that here in just a second. So how should you craft up your Dream 100? Here are some tactical fundamentals of blocking and tackling that I can share with you if it was a game of how to identify some of these people, right? Identify the niche leaders and check their audience engagement level. Okay? And this helps you understand their ability to create noise, right? So like, let's say give me an example of an industry that you guys are serving in SaaS. Give me an example. Hey, Steven, thanks for jumping in. Seppi, thanks for jumping in. A few people that are already jumping in. Give me an example of an industry that I should provide an example for. Let's see, what industries are you guys in right now for SaaS? Vijay's first, right? He said real estate. So in real estate, right, obviously Grant Cardone is like a really big real estate person, right? And he's an investor, he's a developer. Everybody, the whole world knows that, right? So is that somebody that you can put on your industry 100? More than likely, yes, right? But at the same time, that's a long-term process of getting in front of somebody like that, right? So in the beginning, your Dream 100 could be even more, less resistive, like the top realtor in your city. Who is that guy, right? The top realtor in your state, right? The top builder in your country or whatever, right? The top publications of that space in your region, right? Like these are Dream 100s, even at a smaller level, that you try to identify in finding out who are the best service providers, the best product providers, associations, organizations. Another favorite one of mine is the best podcasters of the industry, right? And guess what happens? When I do my Dream 100, what I look for is who are they associated to and with. I'm not just interested in creating a relationship with them directly. I look at their network of immediate people, right? Like if I'm gonna go after a certain person, I'm going to look at their 3 big people around them, and would it make sense if I go after this person and they have nobody in their network that's going to contribute to anything I have going on, or vice versa? Maybe I cannot add value to what they have going on, right? So these are ways you want to look at and figure out who they're partnered up with, right? Now, once you have identified them, guys, here's what happens. You're gonna split your Dream 100 list, and sometimes you might not even have 100 people. Just so you know, you can have 10 people in your list. It's not about the size of the list; it's about the size of the fish in your list. Okay, so don't overthink the idea of 100 people. It's more about prioritizing a certain group of category of people and getting in front of them in creative ways, okay? So, but once you identify a group of people that makes sense for you to be really the top partner or whatever, or affiliate or whatever you want to do with them, you want to first identify them as people that can buy services from you, right? So that's like somebody that fits your ideal customer criteria. Then you'll also have a certain group of people who are not necessarily direct customers of yours, but they have influence to your customers, okay? So that's the B2C and the B2B portions of the Dream 100. Sometimes, let's say they may have your audience, right? Even though they themselves are not your audience. And that's okay. You still want to add them, but you want to prioritize them, right? Now, that's step 1. You figuring out who are direct and who are not direct. But at the end of the day, you want to prioritize them and say, you know what, priority 1, priority 2, priority 1, priority 2. And what I do is figure out who I should cater to first in my January as I build out my agency prospecting machine, right? And then I prioritize that way. Step 2 is figuring out their individual interests and target them organically with creative, thoughtful ideas and concepts, okay? What I mean by that is, I will look them up on Facebook. I will look at their publications. I'll look at what kind of content they put out on YouTube. I'll look at where they've contributed, who's interviewed them, what have they done, where have they spoken to, which associations are they with, who have they sponsored, what have they created, what kind of business do they have, what are their products, what are their services. You guys follow me so far? Right? And this gives me a really good framework of the influence of this brand or person, right? It tells me their noise level, right? If I were to give them an offer, can they push my offer? If they cannot push your offer, like sometimes, just so you guys know, we know how to check the strength of an affiliate, right? We understand which affiliate we have in our ecosystem could push something the farthest versus someone who can just do high ticket versus somebody who can do volume. Like we know those measurements because guess what? We do our homework on who is who, right? Our Dream 100, right? And some of you that are watching in here could be part of that Dream 100 because it changes constantly, right? But either way, here's a creative part of the Dream 100, okay? You want to be you, authentic, thoughtful, clever, but the idea is to grab attention from them who usually don't provide access in the market, right? Like they're not going to just be up front and center where you can just go talk to them, right? And you want to think of this as a very much a long-term relationship. You're not trying to sell them or buy anything or be salesy or messenger. Like it's really not a spammy thing. It's more like, let me create a relationship with this person who's an authority or a brand that's an authority in the industry that I'm serving. So automatically you being associated with that person or authority raises your credibility in the industry. Okay, so that's one thing that happens. But what do you do, right? Like what exactly do you do? Let's see, where was I? What exactly could happen to this Dream 100 list, right? They could become your top affiliate. You just don't know, right? They could become the best referral partner or provide the best solutions for your customers or your subscribers, right? And ultimately, guess what happens? They allow you to borrow their audience and vice versa, right? And it creates like this natural flow when two authorities get together. And you might be feeling, Paulson, like, I don't feel that authoritative in my space anytime soon. I'm just starting out. But guess what? Connect with everybody that's already an authority. All it takes is one authority, one brand to bring you in to an interaction, right? If all it takes is one person to like and trust and know you and feel comfortable to bring you in, and all of a sudden you become at least an expert for that moment on, right? And at least in some sense somebody that provides resources, and obviously you got to provide value to whoever you're catering to, right? So when should you start and how often, right? So first thing I would do right now as you launch your SaaS is start doing the research on the industry and figure out who are the top players that make sense for you to turn into your Dream 100, right? Or maybe it's a little indirect, maybe other sub-industries that have influencers or whoever that can contribute to it. And the idea is to get in front of them. So how can you get in front of them, okay? You can send them, essentially lumpy mail if you want to, right? You can send them, and by the way, this whole idea of Dream 100 was created by a guy named Chet Holmes. Chet Holmes is essentially one of the big sales guys that Charlie Munger hired to figure out what to do with some of their publications. They did multiple projects, but when Chet Holmes went in there, he wrote a book called Ultimate Sales Machine. It's like a red cover with like a gear on it. I read it, I don't know, many years ago. But Chet Holmes is the person that put together Dream 100, and the idea was, instead of just me catering to everybody, let me go through this targeted list of the best customers I can talk to. And what he would do is just send them a mail and write them a letter, and that just says, hey Ben, I just want to say I appreciate you and what you are doing in the industry. I love what you're contributing. And it's just non-stop positive stuff, right? And then over time, what he would do is send them lumpy mail of like small gifts and like, things that will just attract them, where it's just almost disruptive or entertaining or motivational, or all those canvases whoever wants to choose from, right? And eventually what happens is like you consistently send somebody something or get in front of them at least once in a month. Over the course of a year, out of your Dream 100, let's say 5 people that are top players in the industry responds to you. Let's say that's what happens. Imagine the force that will bring to your organic marketing, right? It's quite significant, right? They will bring their traffic. They will bring ecosystems and merge with the audiences that you're building. They will confirm your offers. They will co-sign your business, and they will really provide credibility that doesn't exist just yet, right? So it's a long-term strategy. You have to do this, like literally what you want to do every single day is like, out of, let's say you're doing cold emailing and phone calls and all these things, spend like 30 minutes to an hour and take 10 people in your Dream 100 list and send them something. Send them a letter of gratitude. Hey, listen, I looked at everything you did in 2021. I just want to write a letter of appreciation of what you have done to the industry, right? Imagine if somebody received that and they look at this letter and they're like, man, who the heck is this guy? I don't know who this is, but this person is positive in providing feedback or messaging. And that's what I'm saying here. Use positive suppositions versus negative suppositions. How many of you guys remember like 2 years ago, like the Loom strategy, right? The idea of you recording like a Loom video, reviewing like a website or a funnel and sending it to the business owner. And it was just like, everybody was doing that for a while, right? Until people realized it's built on negative supposition, right? I'm gonna send you a Loom video of what's wrong with your business. After a while, guess what happens? People don't want to deal with the negativity. So that whole Loom concept pretty quickly died out, right? But it was effective because it was creative. But imagine if it was positive, right? So really think of positive ideas and positive suppositions in your messaging. And and really focus in. It doesn't have to be like a random phone call or cold email. This is you sending, like, let's say I'm in Houston, right? And if I'm in the real estate space, I know, let's say, the top realtor in the city, and I don't know anything about them. Well, all I'm going to do is research them, find out where they are, confirm that they're the number one realtor, and I'm going to send them maybe like a bottle of wine, right? I'm just going to say, hey, listen, it seems like you've done great things in the community. I just want to say thank you for what you have done in the industry, right? Do you think that'll capture their attention? They'll be like, who is this person? I don't know why they send me a bottle of wine. And then that opens up a conversation to somebody that you normally wouldn't have access to, right? Maybe they have gatekeepers that you can now just bypass, and they will just reply with their personal email or cell phone number. Like, I have cell phone numbers to some interesting players in this space because guess what? I've done this with them. I've done the Dream 100, and they're not gonna, obviously they're not gonna just send that out to anybody and everybody, right? So these are creative ways to figure this out. Now, I wanna add this to the conversation. Hopefully, you guys are getting a lot out of this. Let me just check the streaming. Okay, cool, perfect. Okay, cool. So I want to share with you one more thing as you build out your Dream 100, right? The best way to speed up the effectiveness of your Dream 100 is to leverage the authorities that you do get in front of, right? So I had a friend, so in Texas, basketball is like a big thing. So I had a friend in Dallas. What he would do is put together, he would literally try, like, and there are these, like, I don't know, these church tournaments or national tournament basketball tournaments, right? So what this guy would do is, like, he'll reach out to, like, the best player that he knows and the second best player and the third best player, and he would tell all of them, hey, I'm talking to the other best player to see if he would be down to play as well, right? So it's like he would reach out to the best of the best and tell each other that he's talking to the best of the best as well as them. And then all of a sudden, even though he doesn't even play basketball, or even though he's not even that great as a player, he would organize a group of the best players because he leveraged the better players against the better players, right? He would say, you know what? I've got the best point guard, the best shooting guard, and he would reach out to the best small forward or big man and ask him, hey, listen, this guy's thinking about playing with us. The other guy is thinking about joining the team. Would you be down as well, right? So he would literally leverage authority against authority because guess what? Top guy knows the top guy who knows the other top guys, right? So, like, even with coaching programs, right? If you get into $1,000 coaching programs, guess what? You're going to be in a network of $1,000 people that paid $1,000 for that coaching program, right? But if you paid $20,000 or $50,000 to a coaching program and get into somebody's inner circle or whatever, guess what? Now you have access to those people that are at that capacity, and guess what? You have a new network of Dream 100s that can leverage in multiple ways, right? And this is really either you buy in or you do these activities to get in front of these people, right? And essentially the other really big, providing an audience, right? There's a reason why I told you guys to start your lighthouse, because today you may not have an audience. Eventually it's going to turn into a platform, right? Eventually it'll turn into a stage, maybe a podcast, maybe a YouTube channel, maybe something else, right? Maybe an education brand. Whatever you decide to build out will start from today onwards, right? So when you go to, let's say, another top player in the industry and you tell them, hey, I've heard great things about you. Could I interview you in my podcast? And you provide an audience, so they're actually catering to the masses. And that's usually one of the biggest hacks of how Dream 100s could be sped up quite a bit, right? And you'll see people just taking off. And this whole agency game, guys, It's a game of like slight edge, right? If you have ever read that book, The Slight Edge talks about you working so consistently 80% of the way, all the way through, and at the very end of it, you'll see results drastically just popping like popcorn, right? And that's usually what happens. For you to see the fruits of the labor on Dream 100, you're going to have to do this for a while, okay? This is not going to come overnight. You're going to feel like it's not effective. But over a course of the year, out of Dream 100, do you think it's worth it if one top player in the industry partnered up with you? Do you think it would matter if one top player in the industry let you borrow their audience? Do you think it would matter if one person out of that entire Dream 100 provides credibility to you and your SaaS company, right? And it once that happens, guess what? Now you can go to the second guy and say, hey, listen, this person's already working with me. We've already partnered up, and I would love to engage with you as well, because it seems like you guys are at similar levels and you have different, visions and goals, and I would love to take you there, right? And those are things that you can do as you grow this organic method, right? So today's focus, guys, just priority wise, first, before you do anything, your email marketing has to start. Then your branding lighthouse, right? We talked about all these things. These are webinars that you can go back and watch that we've already done in January. They're all on the YouTube channel. The next thing is your SaaS magnets, right? Then picking your niche pocket approach of whether it's going to be LinkedIn or Instagram messaging or wherever, Facebook group, like wherever your niche is hanging out, figuring out a channel for that area, right? And then it's your Dream 100. And Dream 100 is a long-term thing. Every day you just simply focus on 5 people that you get in front of, or 10 people that you get in front of. Over time, all it takes is 1 or 2, big fish to really pay attention and watch you and see that you're doing some cool things, and it'll take off, okay? Now imagine paid ads on top of all these organic efforts. Do you think you can create an inbound flow and start thinking about a sales team, right? Like imagine the amount of inbound flow you should have when you have all these channels set up, right? The next week, so we're already on the 20th. Today is Thursday. Next week, Monday and Thursday, to close out our January, more than likely what I'm going to do is talk about the messaging, right? The psychology of the actual messages. I know I've got some samples in the SaaS Fast Track program, but I want to go through with you on what exactly are the messages that you send in Dream 100 versus cold email versus cold calling versus regular emails versus writing copy for your content. There's a whole psychology around your language, your messaging language, and we'll talk about that essentially 2 sessions, Monday and Thursday. But guys, was this helpful? I would love for you to turn your cameras on, or if you're actually watching on the streaming, I would love for you to comment and tell me what was your biggest takeaway. What are some questions that you guys have based on everything I'm sharing? How many of you guys are excited to really start your Dream 100? Is this making sense? You see how this layers on top of other channels we talked about, right? And this wouldn't make sense if you didn't have those other areas set up. And once you have this, adding paid ads will make even more sense. And then all of a sudden, voila, you got a prospecting sales machine that's bringing in inbound leads for multiple channels. And then we can talk about building out a sales team, right? But yeah, go ahead. I see Hector. Hector, we just spoke just a little while ago. Good to see you again. Who else? Let's see. What are some takeaways from that you guys all have? I'm gonna watch the streaming here and see some of the comments.
If I may, let me get in here and first off, thank you for everything that you do. But reaching out to somebody in the industry, to the top players, can be very intimidating. But I can see the power behind it.
Yeah. The top players are all intimidating, but guess what? They're all human. There's and they've all failed, right? And
Yeah.
like, nobody to me is big enough in my head to be unreachable, right? Because like one, I have exposure to large businesses now, and I have that confidence to walk in and be like, I have that experience, right? So over time, you'll see that everybody is the same, right? Including the biggest players. They all have similar issues and problems. Guess what's missing in today's experience online? It's the humanized messaging. Everybody's missing that because guess what? All the messages are typically spammy. They're trying to sell you something or there's an agenda behind it. Nobody's connecting at a human level anymore because they have busy lives, right? So when you come in and say, hey, listen, I see that you're a family man. Love to hear more about your story in marriage. Love to connect. And if that's the type of approach you have with somebody on Dream 100, guess what happens? Their guard goes down and they understand that you're just trying to connect. There's not a specific agenda. And at that point, you'll be able to create a trust and a relationship there that you could really grow. It's a long-term strategy. You may not get something out of it today, but guess what? They may write comments on your paid ads that validates you. They may engage with you on a post that says, you know what? Hector's doing cool things. I've seen some of his stuff. And that's what would happen to me when I did my Dream 100. Some of these people, even though they may not interact with me, they will like my post. They'll engage with me or they'll share something that I've done, right? So it definitely will have an impact as you grow. Okay, let's see. What are some of the other comments we're seeing today? Let's see. Bishop says, hey, does Paulson have any replays? Yes, all in the YouTube channel. For those of you that are watching in the streaming, give me some comments of what was your biggest takeaway today. Is this Dream 100 idea making sense? Are you seeing the power of it? And at the same time, I hope you understand when to prioritize this. Not just any time. This is not something you just launch with for no reason without setting up the other channels that I talked about, okay? And this is an ongoing process, even though you may have paid ads running. This is something you do for like a year or two until you grow into those brands, okay? Okay, awesome, guys. Let's see. Ben says, how do you establish a long-term relationship virtually? Well, I'm not saying virtually, right? Your intention with Dream 100 is to get in front of them and get their attention. How you build a relationship is a different thing, right? Like the old dental practice, I had a guy, I remember he was creating a product to compete with Invisalign. He reached out to me, he's a dentist. He wasn't even a client of mine, but he just watched all my stories and content and saw me in all the dental Facebook groups. He reached out. He's like, hey man, I'm creating this whole new competitor to Invisalign. Would you be down to fly out to South Carolina to spend some time with me? I said, yeah, sure, no problem, right? And I flew out there and I'm spending time with this random stranger that I've never met, and I'm taking him out to dinner, right? Because guess what? He was part of my Dream 100 and I made sure I added him as a friend. I made sure I followed him everywhere. I made sure I encouraged him. I made sure I interacted with all his postings and engagements, and and I started sending him stuff too. Randomly, when I see other dental practices doing like clinical stuff, I will send him clinical things that I'm finding in other places, right? So all of a sudden, he doesn't see me as a marketing guy. He sees me as a friend. He sees me as a potential partner. He sees me as a potential affiliate. It's a whole different dynamic. So Ben, it's up to you too to figure out your way of building your relationship. It's not going to be, oh, let me just hang out on Zoom. This is where you do take people out for dinner or you do go vacation with them, and it's really a long-term strategy in some sense. Then you go to conferences together, right? Like, hey, let's go to this conference together because we have common interests and like things like that. Great question, right? Anybody else have any questions when it comes to the Dream 100? I'm looking at the Facebook streaming. I see there's about 20 of you that are watching collectively. Let's see. Okay, great. I'm glad we got a chance to go over this. This is something you add on top of your organic efforts. Again, this is long-term plan, right? And really what I want you to do is think of paid ads on top of this, right? Imagine paid ads if all your organic channels are already running. Imagine if your email's already running. Imagine if your branding is already happening with your lighthouse. Imagine if you have your Dream 100 that you're cranking out. And now it's like a systematic approach. It's not just a bunch of different things. It's more of a systematic approach of how you're looking at it. Seppi says, are the Dream 100 people who have access to your ideal clients, or are they part of your ideal clients? Yeah, that's a question that I had just addressed, right? Which is sometimes it may be, but you'll have people in your Dream 100 that have your audience, even though they directly may not be your audience. It includes both, but what you want to do is prioritize them, right? The folks that are your ideal clients are the ones that you do prioritize today. But if you go through that list, right, eventually you'll get to priority 2, which is people that are B2B that have your audience, right? But I would first go attack the folks that are your actual ideal clients, because revenue first, right? So get to revenue first. Because of that, I would prioritize them that way. But it's consistent of both, somebody who has your audience or the ones that are your direct audience. Okay, great question. As you guys may have more questions. Let's see. Elni, how are you? Good seeing you. She says, no questions, but I appreciate it. Makes the whole thing human. Yes, 100%. In the jungle of, what's the word? When I look at LinkedIn, for example, it's just a spam machine, right? If I were to send out emotional, humanized messages on LinkedIn, I promise you my messages will stand out in their conversations box, because it just looks like a person that's genuinely reaching out to connect, right? In that similar way is how I would approach Dream 100. But great points. I appreciate all of you. And what I'm going to do is have our team upload this as replay into the YouTube channel. And I hope to hear from you soon around your Dream 100 as you get started. And go from there. Have a good rest of your afternoon, everybody. Take care.